welcome to episode 3 of series 2 of Dalek Bumps Question Time. These questions were submitted to me via my Discord server, and our first questions are from Scareth1979, who asks, question 1. What are some of your favourite non-Dalek stories? That's a good question. In terms of classic Who, I adore the Pertwee era, especially the stories with Joe Grant's unit and the Master, like Terror of the Autons or The Mind of Evil. I also particularly like The Tomb of the Cybermen from the 2nd Doctor era, The Ark in Space from the 4th Doctor era, and Vengeance on Varos from the 6th Doctor era. In terms of New Who, my favourite episodes include Father's Day, Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel, Planet of the Ood, Amy's Choice, The God Complex, Flatline, Heaven Sent, Knock Knock, The Doctor Falls, and The Haunting of Villa Diodati. But honestly, it's difficult choosing a favourite Doctor Who episode because I like the vast majority of them. There are very few Doctor Who episodes that I genuinely dislike. Question 2. If every Dalek episode was going to be wiped from the archive and you could only keep 5, which would you choose, including Big Finish, the comics and the books, etc.? Including Big Finish, this is an extremely tough question. I suppose I'd have to keep Blood of the Daleks, as well as the TV stories Dalek and Remembrance of the Daleks, but I'm seriously stumped as to what to include for my other 2 picks. It's difficult. I know Genesis would seem like an obvious choice, but it's quite light on actual Dalek content, and in this hypothetical timeline in which the vast majority of other Dalek stories are wiped out, then Genesis loses a lot of its weight. My final 5 picks are Remembrance of the Daleks, Dalek, The Parting of the Ways, Blood of the Daleks, and Order of the Daleks, but that was a tough one. Our next questions come from Dragonzilla6482, who asks, question 1. Which Daleks from Big Finish or Time Lord Victorious would you like character options to make figures of? This is another tough one. There are so many that deserve their own figure releases. The Time Controller, the Time Strategist, the Stained Glass Daleks, the Jubilee Dalek, and the Restoration Emperor, to name just a few. However, all of these would require some extensive retooling of the figure sculpt, or perhaps even a new sculpt entirely in some cases, which makes it unlikely that we'll see any of these anytime soon. However, I think it is realistic that character options could release figures of other Time Lord Victorious Daleks, the Executioner, the Scientist, the Prime Strategist, etc., as these only require a repaint and some minor retooling of the appendages. It would be nice to have a second wave of Big Finish Dalek figures, as while the first 3 sets were good, it felt like a bit of a stretch as it was clear that the designers were only given bronze Dalek sculpts to work with, whereas alternate classic Dalek figures would make much more sense for Big Finish. Question 2. If you were to put the Daleks up against an unlikely foe, someone or something from outside of Doctor Who, then what would it be? Even though I'm not too familiar with it, I'd probably pit the Daleks against the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40k. As lots of comments on my last Question Time video asked me to cover that topic when I talked about pitting the Daleks against the Galactic Empire, the Flood, or the Borg, I'd be very interested to see how this matchup would play out, as while I have complete confidence in the Daleks wiping the floor with basically any other fictional species or faction, from what I've heard of them, the Imperium of Man would definitely give the Daleks a run for their money, and it would actually be interesting to see how the Daleks would deal with such a threat. Pero of Nigma asks, are there any Dalek concepts created by fans that you would like to see canonized? There is a very popular fan-made Dalek variant called the Dalek Storm, which is based on a sketch for an alternate version of the Special Weapons Dalek that was created as part of the ill-fated Dark Dimension that was never made. Dalek project builders used this sketch to create a fully working prop of Dalek Storm, which looks amazing and actually serves a functional purpose as a battlefield unit, being an interim stage between a standard Dalek and a Special Weapons Dalek. I'd love to see this thing appear in an actual episode, and not as set dressing either. Imagine something like Eve of the Daleks, where the Doctor and co are trapped in a confined area like a derelict ship or something, and they're being hunted by this thing. Sounds brilliant to me. And for our last question today, RobotX9285 asks, what would you consider as your favourite Dalek soundtrack? There are loads of fantastic pieces of Dalek music to choose from. Murray Gold did some fantastic pieces for the Daleks from 2005 to 2012, even if they were a bit bombastic and perhaps even a tad over-dramatic at times. And Segun's Dalek theme from the Chibnall era is equally great, being punchy and great for action scenes without sounding over the top. Remembrance of the Daleks also has some great music, even if the 80s sound is a little dated. I'd choose The Daleks, Murray Gold's initial theme for them, which went on to become somewhat of a theme motif for the Cult of Skaro, but specifically the ambient creepy part with the pulsating electronic sounds. I'd really like to hear that return, as it added a great sense of tension and fear to the mere presence of the Daleks that could have come in really handy during Asylum of the Daleks but wasn't used for some reason, despite the Moffat era reusing quite a lot of Dalek tracks from 2005 to 2009. A close runner-up is Segun's Dalek theme for its great action scene potential, and also the screeching crescendo that plays during Remembrance whenever we see the Daleks' point of view. And that wraps up this episode of Dalek Bumps Question Time. Leave your answers to these fantastic questions in the comments below.
Don't forget to click below to subscribe to
Dalek Bumps.